Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Badgerland Birding Podcast, bringing you birding news and stories from the Badger State and beyond. This is Ryan, and I'm here today with special guest Greg Miller. Greg, how is it going tonight?
It's going great. Glad to be off the road.
Yeah, I can imagine. Where are you headed again?
I'm headed to Laredo eventually, but I just left Florida and drove through Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana in the last couple of days.
Did you do any birding along the way?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay, just straight through.
Yep.
Gotcha. So, if anybody out there doesn't know, Greg is the real life human that Jack Black's character was based off of in The Big Year. We've had Greg on before and talked all about The Big Year, and he was actually at the same birding festival, which was the Space Coast Birding Festival in Florida, and we got the chance to go birding and hang out and stuff like that. Greg, what did you think of the festival overall?
The festival is great, a lot of fun. Uh, it's like many festivals, you get to see a lot of people and go birding. It was a bit chilly, but the birds were good, and that was a very festive atmosphere. It was a lot of fun to go birding with all those people.
Yeah, it was funny because Florida you always think of as super hot, and we had severe cold in the north. So when we left, it was like 1 degree. And then in Florida, I think it was around 50, and everyone was absolutely losing their mind because people picked that 1 week to go down there for Disney or just that was their one vacation, and they went down there and it was windy and rainy.
Yeah,
And then I
it was
think there were some
chilly for
people.
Florida.
Oh, what was that?
It was chilly for Florida.
Yeah, and it was weird because we left the really cold weather up north in Wisconsin and it still felt cold. Usually you go somewhere and if it's warmer than where you left, it still feels warm. It still felt cold to be in the rain and the humidity and the 50 degrees. But there were some people out there wearing shorts, and we were hypothesizing that perhaps they didn't actually own pants living in Florida.
Or they didn't plan on it.
Yeah, or they didn't plan on it.
Didn't look
Um,
at the weather.
Yeah, we I remember looking at the weather and I was just like, "Oh," because we had a lot of birds that we were trying to chase down there, so I was bummed out to see that it was raining. But I think we personally did pretty well. When we went birding with you, obviously it was fairly nice out. What did you do for the first half of the festival anyway? What were you up to?
Um, the first day of the festival, I did the pelagic trip was canceled or actually postponed. So I ended up birding in southern Brevard County.
Get anything good?
Uh, Brown-headed nuthatches were the highlight. Pine warblers, um, just normal Florida everyday birds like roseate spoonbills, some purple gallinules, ho hum.
Yeah, no big deal for Florida. Big deal for most other parts of the country. I was doing some research though on purple gallinules because we've actually had them twice in Wisconsin. I found out that they're very good flyers and have a pattern for vagrancy, which I was a little surprised about.
We actually have a nesting record from just a couple of years ago in Ohio.
Really?
How bizarre is that?
Yeah, that's pretty weird that two of
That's
them
very,
decided to
very
do that.
rare.
Oh, that's odd. So when we went birding, first thing on our list was red-cockaded woodpecker. So we went like I think it was the first within the first 3 or 4 days of the festival. Greg didn't have anything to do, and we were gonna go look for some birds and try some different hot spots. So we ended up getting the chance to go look for red-cockaded woodpecker, which I was a little worried we weren't gonna get at first because the forest seemed really quiet. But then we did manage to happen upon one. We had to cross some sort of flooding, which always seems to be the case with red-cockaded woodpeckers. You've probably seen a bunch of them before, but how happy were you to get that bird?
Actually, every time I'm with other people and they haven't seen it, I am elated to stumble across them because they're not guaranteed, even if you go to the correct area at any time of day. If you're there straight away in the morning and you know which hole they've been roosting in, then they're not too. That you'll see them for 2 or 3 seconds and boom, they're gone. in the dark.
So do they just usually pop out of the hole and then just scatter? They don't usually
Yep.
hang around the roost site?
No.
Hmm, interesting. I know that they usually feed together in family groups, so I was expecting to see multiples, but we literally just saw one female, which was kind of strange.
It happens, but it's that I generally see two, three birds at one time and maybe hear more. But it was windy, kind of. Well, it's not super windy, but enough breeze that it was made my headphones hard to hear with.
Yeah, Greg actually came out with tons of gear. He had headphones to actually listen for the red cockades, which I think actually impaired you more than they helped you. Because we would be like, "Oh, you hear this?" And you were like, "No."
Yep. And the battery is probably going on them, and things sound a little bit different in the head through an audio system than it does with your normal regular hearing.
Hmm. Yeah, so we got red cockaded woodpecker, which was cool. Oh, you also had the 360-degree camera, which was neat. So it's this camera that it can take a video essentially every single direction. So it got these cool 360s of the habitat. How long have you
Yep.
been using that for?
Uh, this is my second year with that, but I really enjoy it. You could do a lot of cool gimmicky stuff with it, but I like it for birding. Uh, just on the 10-foot pole, the selfie stick,
Hmm.
to be able to get a nice pano, 360 pano. But I also like to throw it over my shoulder, and it looks like a drone is following me hiking down a path, and I can spin it around. And uh, I had it in Maine with me, and a raven. I heard a raven behind me while I was recording, and it flew out over me and left in the distance. So in post, when I went to edit, I wanted to see if I could draw a little square around it and have the AI follow it, and it did. So I was able to follow the raven from behind me over the top of me and out into the distance in front of me.
Oh, that's cool. That's a really neat thing to be able to see.
So I didn't actually see it in real life until it passed over me, but I was able to track it with the camera because it was going when it occurred.
Hmm. Yeah, that's cool. That kind of view sort of reminds me of another thing that happened, which was when we went to Orlando Wetlands, which at the time I definitely thought was the best place that we went to. We later went to some places that could potentially have been better. I don't know for sure, but we were so close to a purple gallinule that we actually got the GoPro down where it was feeding, and we called it Gallinule Cam.
Uh, that was pretty awesome. So I'm guessing you went to Wakotahachie.
Indeed.
That's it's a fabulous place, hands down one of my favorite places to go in Florida.
Yeah, I would agree. And I don't know what it's been like the times that you've been there, but as soon as we walked in, you walk through, well, it's a boardwalk. So boardwalks are always good for the most part. And you walk through what I presume to be a rookery because there was wood storks everywhere. And they were above you, they were next to you, and you could definitely have touched them if you wanted to. We did not, but you could have. So we were just walking in. It was kind of close to dusk. We were actually hoping to get better looks at Nande parakeet, and we were hoping to find short-tailed hawk. But then we got distracted by all the random things that you could take photos and videos of and just see at Wakotahachie.
And an alligator.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we heard an alligator take a bird while we were there because we heard this kind of chomp and a big splash, and then all the birds went nuts. So I didn't see what happened, but I assumed that that was an alligator grabbing a bird off of one of the rookeries.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah. And we also got good looks at gray-headed swamp hen there.
Oh, good. The purple swamp things.
Yes. So we got that. I'm trying to remember what else we got there. There were tons of white ibises, cormorants, and hingas. There's a big gator there that I think his name was Big George. And that thing was an absolute monster.
Did you get to see any iguanas while you were there?
Yes, the iguanas were in
Oh,
their
awesome.
bright orange breeding colors, and they were just sitting in the tree. So you would just see this big orange blob in a tree, and it would be one of the iguanas. So that was
That's quite a
interesting.
too.
So you may know this more than me, but do they actually cause physical harm to humans on a regular basis? Because I heard people say that they will bite your fingers if you're sitting in a chair or something and your hand is just over the edge. And I heard some people talking about how someone got hurt by one of the iguanas at some point.
I have not heard that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean they are pretty big and they have some claws, so I assume that if you tried to grab one or something, it could do some damage.
It might be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And they have some pretty big jaws, I think, and some pretty big teeth. So I kind of wanted to try to grab one, but we never got close to one, close enough to actually do anything. They were always off the boardwalk, or we saw them when we were driving near ditches and things like that. But Wakotahachie was one of the best places I think that we went. And another one was Green Cay.
Oh, absolutely. Did you get the painted bunnies there at the feeders at the entrance?
No, when we were there, it was kind of close to dusk again. So I
Uh,
think the only thing around was some boat-tailed grackles and a red-bellied woodpecker. And we missed the Chuckwill's widow that's usually there apparently as well.
oh,
So it wasn't the greatest day that it could have been at Green Cay, but it was still cool because it's another place that has a rookery. It's an elevated boardwalk. You can look down on top of the birds. So Florida had great birding infrastructure.
yeah, indeed.
Yeah, we did a video on the top five places to go birding in the US, and we did put Florida in the top five. And visiting it again, I'm glad that we did because I still agree that it's one of the top five places. I will say that Miami was pretty hectic going through there. I didn't really enjoy birding in Miami.
That well, burning in Miami not so bad. Driving in Miami, no.
Yeah, we got yellow chevron parrots there, and we got Egyptian goose and spot-breasted oriole. So we got all the things that aren't really supposed to be there.
Well, it sounds like Miami.
Yeah. You know what thing we could not find though was white crown pigeon.
Did you make it down to the Keys at all?
No, we didn't go that far. Are they
Uh,
everywhere down there?
they're actually pretty easy in the Keys. Yeah.
Yeah, we tried to go around this neighborhood that there were reports at, and it was called the White Crown Pigeon Stakeout neighborhood. And we drove around it for a cumulative total of probably an hour and had no luck.
Uh, Key Largo is your spot. And you don't have to drive very. Just that might be the first key. Uh, that there you could stop. Or if you went to John Pennekamp State Park, that's a good spot for both mangrove cuckoo and white-crowned pigeon.
That's pretty cool. So basically, I think we need to make another trip down there at some point to get some stuff that's still remaining on our list
Yep.
because we also didn't get short-tailed hawk.
Oh, well, that you need to go to Everglades City down in the south end of the Everglades National Park.
That's kind of what it looked like on eBird. But there was a bunch of reports. There were reports at Orlando wetlands. There were reports at Wakotahachie. But I kind of wonder how many of them were not legitimate.
Well, they might be legitimate, but it's just not something that's guaranteed. If you went to southwest side of Lake Okeechobee to Fish Eating Creek, along that area, they breed there, and my luck has been better. Away from Everglades City, that's probably the best place. Southwest Lake Okeechobee.
Gotcha.
Next time
Okay.
you go, ask me, and I'll give you some spots.
Noted. As long as it's not the kind of spots where you're like, it was really good 10 years ago.
Oh, I got a few of those.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that do that all the time where you ask them where a good spot is, and they're like, well, back when I was there 15 years ago, I got mine at this spot. And you're like, okay, thank you. That's great.
Yes, and they come in both color morphs, the white morph and the dark morph.
Yeah, we didn't see either. We did see a lot of red-shouldered hawks, a lot of ospreys. So we were kind of bummed out about that one. But going back to the Florida birding spots, what do you think is the best one between Wakota, Green Cay, and Orlando Wetlands? If you had to tell somebody one spot, which one would you pick of those three? Or would it be some other place
Probably Wakota.
for the stork views?
And it's actually, it was closer than I thought to that new boardwalk on Orlando Wetlands. You don't have to go as far south. You don't have to deal with traffic because by the time you even get to Boynton Beach, Delray Beach, that area, you're already dealing with quite a lot of traffic and more expensive hotels. And yeah, Orlando Wetlands would be better for a visitor who's averse to traveling long distances in traffic.
Yeah, plus it also had the tram. So if you didn't feel like walking but wanted to survey the whole area really quickly and get stuff pointed out to you, it was really convenient. And it was cool to be able to do that and then stop on the boardwalk and get close-up looks at everything. Because our boardwalk experience was nuts. There was the purple gallinule, a lot of common gallinules, and then a roseate spoonbill kept just coming back and forth, gathering nesting material. And we actually have a video of you where you're like, it was too close. I got pictures of parts of the bird.
I should have sent you a picture of that just individual feathers.
Yeah, just the orange tail feathers or the
Right,
spoon on the bill.
exactly.
So you, after part of the festival you were in, you ended up going south and then back up north again for the
Yeah,
pelagic.
correct.
Did you do any birding down when you went south toward Miami?
Uh, yeah, I did. Right before the festival, I stayed with friends in Vero Beach, and we birded at TM Goodwin and also Fort Drum, closer to the center of the state. The Fort Drum location is good for winter passerines, maybe half a dozen warbler species, and a nice little cypress boardwalk. It's a pretty cool spot. And you need to get permission to be on the land. But it's not hard to do, but you need to know ahead of time that that's where you want to go and then write, get permission, and then take your information to get in.
Who do you get permission from?
I think it's state, Fort Fort Drum. I don't remember if it's state or if it's a local. Um, but my friends had already gotten just written them, got permission, and had the information for the locks that are on gates, so that you can get in. But it's a fun place. We had, I think my favorite bird was a Louisiana water thrush. I did not get a photo, but that's a pretty good bird for this time of year.
Yeah, we definitely didn't see any warblers overall. Seemed like they were a little farther south generally. I think we only got the usual suspects of palm, yellow rumped. I think we had one black-throated green, but that was about it. Yellow throats, a few of those. And then how was the pelagic? We heard mixed
Oh,
things about how the pelagics can be there. It's either they're good or they're really bad.
well, actually, for pelagic trips are the birder's biggest gamble because you might get boom or you might get bust, and rarely anything in between. And the thing is that food is not evenly distributed on the ocean. It depends on where the food is available, and if you come across where the food is, you'll have multiple multiple birds. So we had some Sargasso shearwaters, which were formerly Audubon shearwaters. We had Bonaparte's gulls, frigate bird, magnificent frigate birds, several of them, lots of northern gannets, always fun to watch. Some flocks of red phalaropes, uh, red-throated loon, and some common loons. And I'm probably forgetting something, but oh, parasitic Jaeger.
Oh, nice.
That was a highlight. That's always a good bird. Anytime you get a Jaeger, it's a good day.
And there was that one bird that you guys couldn't decide what it was, right? That one
Right.
shearwater.
There's a one small shearwater that had what looked to be extra white around the face, and it's being debated among folks the potential Barolos uh, shearwater, formerly called Little Shearwater.
That's pretty cool. If that one
Uh,
turns out to be good.
if that one gets confirmed, that would be uh, a very, very good bird.
So that would make the trip for you, basically.
Uh, yes, absolutely it would.
That's cool. What do you think? What do you prefer, Atlantic pelagics or Pacific?
I prefer Pacific over Atlantic. Atlantic, I still do because there are birds there that you're not going to find on the West Coast. But for a good pelagic, you usually need to go out 20 miles or more on the East Coast. The Gulf Stream moves, so you don't know how far you need to go until you get close to the day that you're going out. Uh, but the Atlantic is usually more rough. The seas are usually not as calm, although they were uh, this last Monday. So they were. It was a good day out. Uh, what I like about the West Coast projects, particularly around Monterey, is the deep water upwellings occur just a couple miles offshore, and you don't have to go very far at all before you have marine life and birds. So you could go 2 miles out and have shearwaters, and that's always a treat. And going September is probably your best time to go as far as diversity for numbers of species. You may see hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of sooty shearwaters, and it's just amazing to see the sky full of seabirds. And there are days of migration where even from shore you can see sooty shearwaters streaming by, and you might yourself count 1,000 birds streaming by.
That's pretty wild. We did one out of Washington and we got kind of all the usual suspects. We got sooty shearwater. I'm not as big a fan of pelagics as Derek is though, because Derek's got the OM, so he likes taking pictures. I was trying to take videos of stuff and it did not work at all because it's going up and down and you're going up and down. So I think the best clip I got was like 2.1 seconds where it's still somehow, and then after that just like lose it.
That would be really, really super difficult. But I didn't think about it. My 360 camera has a horizon lock on it. So even though you're moving around wildly, it locks on the horizon and your picture looks pretty steady. You could actually get video with that. I should have tried it. I
Yeah,
didn't
you
think
missed
about
out. You'll have to go on another pelagic.
Oh, there you go.
Do you do a
There's
lot of
always
them nowadays?
not as many as I used to. During my big year, I did 17 of them.
Did you actually show up on Thanksgiving one time when it was a Siberian storm?
No, that was a made up story, but it was a good one because something like that could have happened that year.
That's a shame. Movie
Actually,
ruined now.
my Thanksgiving story wasn't a pelagic trip. That was one where I uh, I was birding in Florida. I think I drove from Tampa to Miami on Thanksgiving Day or something like that. I had a cheese-filled turkey dog from Circle K,
That was your Thanksgiving dinner.
holiday treat.
Very good. So somebody asked, and so what we were doing is we let everyone know that we were going birding with you, and we let them ask some questions. And What was the one that was? Oh, somebody asked if you would ever do an Ohio State big year because that's where you live. I'm more curious, would you actually do another Continental big year or an ABA big year?
I I I would consider it under the right conditions. I think what I would want to do is advertise it and raise money for, some birding charity uh, organization. Like when I did the design the big year trips for Wildside Nature Tours in 2016, and then did all of them. Um, I raised, I think it was $27,000 for ABA Young Birders, and I thought that was a pretty cool thing to do, and it was fun because it was only 12 one-week trips that I did that year, and ended up with 545 species of birds in 12 weeks.
Yeah, you were telling us that you devised a plan to get over 404 counties in 4 consecutive weeks in the United States. I won't
I
make you reveal your secrets to it, but it sounded like it was a plan that was in motion that would happen at some point potentially.
It probably will happen at some point, yes.
I think that,
four
oh,
four
go
weeks,
ahead.
400 birds. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that you should push for a big year two being made. You just have to figure out what the plot is. It could be something like that.
Well, we're going to have to do it instead of having it done by Hollywood, because the one on Hollywood, it didn't make a lot of money. In
Yeah,
fact,
why do you think that was?
marketing
In
is
what way?
um, well, for normal movies, with movies that they spend a lot of marketing on, they'll come up with the trailers 6 months ahead of time, and most of them will come out 3 months ahead of time. This one only had 1 month of trailer, and then you didn't hear about it much, and it was only in 2,000 theaters, which is it's a nationwide one, but not as big as some of the other releases. And I'm not sure. It looks to me like what happened was somebody was gung ho at the beginning because they have a superior cast, and then the movie was made, and then whoever was in charge of marketing didn't like the idea at all and decided they were probably going to scrap it or something. This is just me thinking from my hip pocket. I don't have anything concrete, but the normal marketing didn't go into it. And it's one of the biggest expenses of a movie.
Is the marketing?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's weird because it had such a good cast and it was very well put together, in my opinion. I think that a problem for it too is the way they marketed it. It looked like it was going to be a slapstick comedy. So
right.
it looked like it was just going to be craziness, and it's actually very heartfelt. And I feel like if they would have marketed it more as a heartfelt movie, it could have done better. But it's I don't think I've seen a cast that's actually better than the big year because it's not just Owen Wilson, Steve Martin, and Jack Black. There's also Rashida Jones in it. There's several other actors. There's Corbin Burnson has a role in it. That's
There's that.
crazy. There's so many good actors in it. So they put a bunch of money into the cast, I'm assuming. And the fact that they didn't do a better job marketing it is crazy.
It is. It's a travesty.
Yeah, we'll
But
have to do an indie film. We'll do an indie film about the big year too. I don't know what the plot's going to be yet, but we'll figure it out.
exactly, it's about the birds.
It could be a county big year. It could be, it'd be funny as if all three of the same people ended up in the same county competing for a county big year. So it was the same concept, but it was super small, insignificant scale.
Neighboring backyards.
Yeah, exactly. They actually live in the same 55 and up retirement community.
The villages in Florida.
Yeah, exactly. It actually sounds more like a sitcom now that I say it out loud, but that's fine. We can do a sitcom. We'll just have to pitch it to somebody that can make it. Or we could just make it Office style or Parks and Rec style.
Exactly.
So what's next for you now that you're headed to Laredo? What are you there to do? Are you guiding?
I'm both guiding and speaking. I'm a keynote speaker there. I'll be doing my normal talk on, and by normal, I basically cover some broad topics, but the stories are different every time because I don't use notes. But I talk about my big year, then how it became a book, and then how it became a movie, and then what it was like to be on the set with Jack Black, Owen Wilson, and Steve Martin.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that's a talk that I think makes sense to give. And you're probably pretty good at remembering some of the finer points of it that people want to hear about.
Yes, the funny stories are the ones where I fail or I have difficulty. People want to know about the struggles more than about the incredible successes or things that went right. It's the things that went wrong that people identify with. And so I tell stories about where I messed up or struggled or had a hard time, and those are the funniest stories too, because you look back on it. I was a success, but I still had all these struggles that I had to overcome. And psychologically, those are much harder while they're happening than they are after the fact when you look back on it. And that's a good life lesson because that's how most of life is. While you're in it, you think, oh my gosh, things are falling apart. And then after it's all done, you go, I hardly remember that.
What was the biggest personification of that? What was the time that in the moment you were like, this is a disaster, and now looking back, you're like, that was hilarious?
Uh, Probably the biggest disaster was being speechless when I first met Jack Black. I I was so embarrassed that I couldn't think of anything to say. There was no intelligible speech. I could feel my face turning, blushing and turning colors. I I struggled hard, but there was nothing there. And then I had another instance. I don't know if I told you or not. Uh, I spilled a chicken salad sandwich from Tim Hortons in Owen Wilson's car on
Yeah.
set. So that was a pretty funny story too. That was another embarrassing moment of Birder on the Hollywood set failing.
Sounds like you were just wreaking havoc on these people.
It is wherever I go. During my big year, the canoe story is a funny one where I did the tide goes out in snake bite, and the people didn't tell me that all the water went out, so I'm stuck out in the mud, having to use my oar to get me back to shore uh, when the tide went out. That was not a fun story while I was in it, but now that I tell it afterwards, that's pretty funny. You did stupid things, Greg.
I mean, how would you have known though? That's one of those things where this happens all the time in birding is that you get some bit of information, but you don't get the whole story. And then after the fact, people are like, oh, well, yeah, you should have done this, or everyone does it this way. And you're like, why didn't you tell me that?
Everybody knows that. Well,
Yeah,
I didn't.
exactly. Yeah, there's a yellow-headed caracara that's down in Miami area, and we were under the impression it was super difficult to get. So we didn't have that much time, so we didn't even go for it. And then the next day we saw that somebody said, "Oh, sitting in its usual roosting spot at night at the same time every day." And we were thinking if we would have known that already, we would have been able to go get it.
There's actually a yellow-headed caracara here in Galveston.
Oh,
So
really?
while I'm here, I may run down to look for that.
That's interesting. Is that one easy to find?
No, but they are in Central America. They're quite easy to find.
Yeah, I think everything's easy to find in Central America, it feels like.
South America, yeah.
Yeah, Central South America. It's funny how many things have a tiny range in the US, and then if you look at the map, they're also in almost all of South America. Snail kites like that, purple gallinules like that.
Yeah. And that's why you go to Arizona in the summertime. And people go, why would you go to Arizona in the summertime? It's so hot. Said, you know how birds fly north in the winter? Or I mean, they fly north to nest on their breeding grounds? That's what the birds of Mexico do. They fly north and go to southeastern Arizona. That is their north. It's not north for us, but it's north for them.
Yeah, for sure.
They
Which
breed.
it's very unfortunate that you have to go to Arizona in the summer to get some of those birds.
It is quite hot, but there are birds to be found in the mountains as well. And so my strategy when I go to Arizona in the summer is to bird the desert valley till about 10 in the morning when it gets stifling hot and things get quiet, and then bird up some local mountain to where it's a little bit cooler because the bird activity actually is pretty good at elevation.
Yeah, I remember that too when I was out in Arizona, and it's neat because you can get out of the heat that way. You don't really think about it at the time, but it's just sweltering at ground level. And then we went up Mount Lemon, and at Mount Lemon it was, a perfect 65 degrees.
Oh,
And that
and
juxtaposition is just insane.
well, when you go to any other country as well, that birding by elevation becomes a thing where you get different birds, like the lodges in Ecuador in the Andes. You have uh, you stop at one lodge and they have this many hummingbirds, and then you go literally 20 miles further and another 1,000 feet up, and you've got birds that don't even overlap. It's like being in a different environment, and you're basically neighbors.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting how everything's layered that way. Are you continuing to kind of go west after Laredo, or are you coming back to Ohio finally?
I'll go back to Ohio after that. I've got a couple of local things that I'm doing in Ohio in March. And then in April, I come back to Texas to Galveston for Featherfest. And then I go to Biggest Week in Ohio after that. And then another local Ohio festival uh, at the end of or beginning of June. And then I don't have anything lined up until Cape May in October.
Finally get a break.
Well, yeah, a break from birding festivals, yes. But I'm caregiving for my 93-year-old mom, and she still loves to garden and gets out. And it's it's my brother and I call ourselves reluctant landscapers. So we enjoy helping her out, being with her. It doesn't matter what we're doing. If she likes it and makes her happy, it makes us happy.
Nice, that's cool. And you said she's incredible at, is it cooking and baking, or was it just baking?
Both.
Yeah, both.
Yeah, it's one thing to be talented at cooking because you can kind of taste things along the way as you go. Or baking, you have to measure things out, be pretty precise, and get your temperatures right and timing right to get things to work out just the way you want.
Yeah, there's no going back from when you baked something. You can't just be like,
No,
well, that didn't turn out well. I'm gonna adjust it. It's done.
right. It's, well, we'll get that next time around.
Yeah, exactly. So we're starting to run out of time. I wanted to get your thoughts on one thing before we head out for the podcast.
Okay.
So in Florida, of course, there's all these naturalized and provisional species. such as all the different parrots that are there, such as the spot-breasted oriole, gray-headed swamp hen, all things that weren't there that are now there. What do you put the value on getting those species versus things that are natural in that region? So do you find it enjoyable to go get the different parrots or get the spot-breasted oriole, or do you find it kind of a eh?
No, I like that just as much as the other natural stuff because the birds don't know that where they're supposed to be or not supposed to be. And I enjoy stumbling across them equally as well as with other things. Um, it's a different kind of birding, but they still count the same on on your checklist.
Yeah.
Still an
So
extra tick.
it felt weird because you saw the Egyptian goose hanging out at the pond, and you're like, this doesn't feel right to count this on my list, but I guess I'm gonna do it anyway. So it's just kind of funny. And there were two blue and yellow macaws there too, that I think they didn't count on the list as naturalized or anything, but it's weird to see all these birds that you just know aren't really supposed to be there, and you just wonder.
Well, it's kind of like counting house sparrows on January the 1st. It's it's a tick, but you don't go out hunting for them every single day. That that would probably be a different feeling.
You're like, that would be unhealthy.
Yeah, no.
All right. Well, anybody that's interested in going to Florida, there's a lot of crazy stuff down there. I've realized when you get into the southern part of the state, other than the things that naturally live in the Keys, there are a lot of birds that were brought over by the pet trade and released and things like that. So it's fascinating what's happening with the ecosystem down in Florida. But nonetheless, you're going to add a lot of birds to your list that wouldn't normally be in North America. So if anyone wants to go down there, it's pretty cool. Greg, is there anything you wanted to say to the listeners and viewers before we sign off?
Well, when you go to Florida, there's also the west coast of Florida. There's whole central Florida, northern Florida. And don't forget the Panhandle because there's some cool birds up there that you don't get the rest of the state. It's a really fun place to bird. And Florida, the Fish and Wildlife Service has done a nice job of, they have, I think, online a birding trail that they put together, and it's actually a pretty fun thing to visit some of those places that you don't hear other people talk about.
Awesome. Yeah, we need to go to the west coast of Florida someday because I saw a lot of stuff reported there. Need to get every
Fort
county, really.
DeSoto,
What was that?
Fort DeSoto, you need to visit that sometime.
I wanted to
Probably
go
one
to
of the,
Tampa and get the hottest spot for the Nande parakeets.
oh yeah, it's probably, yeah, there's several spots that are, you can get them quite easily.
Yeah,
You
it looked
might
like
even
there was masked boobies and
for
brown
lunch.
boobies over there too.
Yeah, you sit outside for lunch and hear Nande parakeets, see them sitting on the wires. It's pretty cool.
See, that sounds fantastic. So we got to
Pretty
find a way to
striking.
get out there.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening and watching this edition of the Badgerland Birding Podcast. Greg, if people want to follow you, where can they follow you at?
Um, I'm active on Facebook. You can follow me, Greg Miller Birding. Uh, if you want to email me, you have questions about something, gregmillerbirding@gmail.com.
That was bold, putting your email address out to the public like that.
It's okay.
All right. And if you want to see more of Greg in action, we're going to have a lot of videos, at least a fair amount of videos that he's going to be in, and we're going to release some of the questions that people asked us to ask him on the Shorts channel. So if you want to hear more about Greg and his big year, be sure to check that out, and we'll catch you next time on the Badgerland Birding Podcast.